Let's talk about decks, baby. Let's talk about CMC. Let's talk about all the good plays and the misplays that you've seen. Let's talk about decks. Let's talk about decks. There aren't many creatures that are more fun to build around than Xyris the Writhing Storm. And that's what we're talking about today on the Deck Primer Xyris list thingamajob. Let's get it! On today's Deck Tech, we've got a little bit of a story before we get started, and it goes all the way back to 2020 at the release of Ikoria. I didn't build Xyris right away with the launch of Commander 2020. I was playing Arena, and at the time when Ikoria launched, I built this deck called the Bag of Song. It was a Bag of Holding, Song of Creation, Riel, and Ominous Seas. So the idea was to cast a bunch of low cost spells. You're manually rifling through your library to cast Thassa's Oracle and win. And it was a glass cannon that was awesome to see when it worked. And so that is what I turned Xyris into, was a Song of Creation deck. And so that is the basis of this whole idea. So let's get into it. The first thing that we have to understand about Xyris is how it is designed and how it is inherently flawed in its design. And maybe that's not a great way to start. The whole thing functions around Xyris. And so when you need to control your commander's got to come out quick, and you have to be able to get your resources fast. So let's talk about ramp. Over the years playing green, I realized that it's not the cards that fetch a bunch of lands and put them onto the battlefield that yields the greatest result of mass amounts of mana. It's enchantment-based mana production that ends up being more valuable. The bones of this structure for the deck relies on enchantments, and so the value you get out of Sanctum Weaver is so much greater than you would get out of most other mana dorks. Two other mana dorks that I'm playing in the deck, I'm playing Birds of Paradise, and I'm also playing Ragavan. How do you classify Ragavan as a mana dork? Yeah, it's the greatest mana dork to ever be printed. Come on. Since I'm a huge proponent to enchantment-based ramp, I might as well continue on the movement and introduce you to Cryptolith Rite in this deck, which is awesome because Xyris is going to spawn you 3 snakes on attack, and you can use those snakes to generate mana. That's what I've just figured with the deck, is you have to be able to use those snakes to greater utility than the cards that you're giving your opponents. Using cards like Cryptolith Rite, Ashnod's Altar, and Phyrexian Altar, you can use your snakes to generate enough advantage to keep the edge over your opponents. A couple of other great enchantments in this deck are Exploration, so you can continue putting lands down after you pick them up. Sylvan Library, for when you can't quite get there with Song of Creation and you discard your hand. Sylvan Library is going to give you that opportunity to pick up 3, use your life as a resource so that you can cast a spell and get the wheels turning again. Treasonous Ogre is also an incredible piece in this deck because it allows you to use your life as a resource the same way that you use it with Sylvan Library, except for mana. And so it allows you to extend your plays by using your life, playing to a little bit more into the risk factor, but I think it's worth it nearly every single time. Other forms of ramp that I'm playing are artifact-based, like Mana Crypt, Mana Vault, all these donuts, because if I'm playing Song of Creation and I want to keep the ball rolling and keep drawing cards, having these donuts and 1-drops in the deck are going to go a long way to making sure that I can get to my win condition that much faster. So yeah, Mana Crypt, Lotus Petal, Jeweled Lotus, Chrome Mox, Mox Diamond, the works, Lion's Eye Diamond, so that we can stimulate Brain Freeze and Underworld Breach lines. Dragon Rage Channeler is also one of the GOAT cards because it can help you filter through cards, filling your graveyard, setting up Underworld Breach, and giving you what you need. 2 other cards I'm playing are Elvish Spirit Guide and Simian Spirit Guide because it increases the percentage chance of getting Xyris out on a turn 1 or turn 2 by having those in hand. When Xyris released, everyone said, wow, what a great Teamer Wheels Commander, it's a Snekusar. It's not Snekusar, it's much more unique than that. I'm not playing a ton of wheels or as many wheels that I can stuff into the deck. That's just unreasonable, and it just doesn't do enough for you to keep refreshing your opponent's hands like that. I'm playing Wheel of Fortune because a turn 1 Wheel of Fortune after ditching a bunch of fast mana just like hurts your opponent so badly because they might have mulliganed to go get like that hand so they can get off to a good start, and then you disrupt that and leave them without a line of strategy. And the same goes for Winds of Change. Honestly, I'm playing 1 wheel for Shizzies and Giggies, and that is Reforge the Soul, because I have a Sensei's Divining Top in here that I can just sort of manipulate so that when I do happen to discard my hand to Song of Creation, I have quite the bomb to drop when I can Miracle Reforge the Soul off the top. The other 2 wheels that I'm playing are Windfall. Seems great. You can, pitch your hand of 20 and force everyone to draw 20 and create a ton of snakes. An Impact Tremors that's essentially going to kill the table. And then Whirlpool Warrior. And I like Whirlpool Warrior just a little bit more because it allows you to recycle your hand, get more information, and then if you don't like what you got, you have the option to do it again and disrupt everybody at the table. And while you have the wheels in your hand, having a Narset, Potter of Veils on the table isn't the worst thing in the world. Even if you do control Xyris, you're still gonna create 3 snakes if you wheel them, but they aren't gonna get more than 1 card back. That is far more valuable than getting snakes. When it comes to card draw, you're going to be playing the 2 most popular versions of card draw in blue. You're going to be playing a Mystic Remora and a Rhystic Study, but when it comes to taking full advantage of Xyris, you want to be using symmetrical card draw that is more in your advantage than in your opponent's. I want to start with this card because it could fall out of the deck any day now, but I refuse to take it out because I love the interaction it has with Ashnod's Altar and with Xyris, and that is Folio of Fancies. Because every time you sack a snake to Ashnod's Altar, each snake you sacrifice for Folio of Fancy's first ability allows each player to draw a single card. So 1 snake becomes 3 snakes. And it allows for this crazy like exponential growth. And if you get far enough and you can sacrifice enough snakes to draw so many cards, you can then use the second ability to mill your opponents out and win the game that way. This deck kind of has like this crazy mill underlying tone where I'm playing enchantments like Psychic Corrosion and then an artifact Altar of the Brood, because every time I make someone draw cards, I'm going to create permanents Altar of the Brood, will then mill them 1. And the same goes for Psychic Corrosion. Every time I draw a card, each opponent's going to mill 2. So Song of Creation's on the board and you're just shooting out cantrips, drawing 2 each time. Each opponent's going to mill 4. And unless they're playing an Endurance or an Eldrazi Titan, like, that is a viable strategy. The inspiration comes from an episode of Dragon Ball Z where Goku is fighting Yakon on the Dark Planet, and Goku decides to power up and go Super Saiyan. He creates a ton of light so you can see what he's doing. Yakon sucks up his energy, and Goku's like, well, what if I gave him so much energy he didn't know what to do with it? He keeps powering up, keeps feeding Yakon, and before Yakon knows it, he's already absorbed too much energy and he explodes and dies. With this concept, with the mill underlying tone, is to overwhelm your opponents with cards to the point where they don't realize that they're picking up and ditching a bunch of cards to the grave and in their hand, and they'll mill themselves or deck themselves out by the time they realize that it's too late for them to do anything. As far as disruptive card draw goes, I do love Teferi's Puzzle Box, even though it's a little bit higher on the mana curve. The other disruptive piece of card draw that I'm using is Burning Inquiry. Because I'm playing Underworld Breach lines, it doesn't necessarily matter if I'm discarding anything, because I'm going to be using my grave to my advantage. So Burning Inquiry becomes create 9 snakes, and your opponents do not gain any more card advantage than what they started with, and they don't know what they're discarding. So you could actually be discarding something that they've been holding to stop you or to stifle you. Let's move on to the pros and cons of Song of Creation. The cons are low, like there are only a couple, and the first con for Song of Creation is that in these colors, red, blue, and green, there's only 1 card in this deck that can truly find Song of Creation, and that is Gamble. And that's not a gamble that I really like taking unless my hand size is huge. The other con is who the artwork is by, because it is such a cool effect and is such a cool card, and then you read the name of the artist and you're like, oh, why is it Noah Bradley? Oh, and he drew a pregnant girl on there. No. Yeah. Wizards, please reprint the card with the new artwork. Please. Outside of those two cons, the card's great. It allows you to play an extra land each turn, and every time you cast a spell, you're gonna draw 2 cards. It is so powerful that when you cast it, your opponents aren't gonna know to be like, I don't know what that does, but I don't want it to do it. Honestly, that's kind of why I love it, is because it's just this great balance of sheer power and risk and reward. The great thing about that standard deck was that when Song of Creation and Ominous Seas were on the battlefield together, it just generated so many Krakens that you just didn't know what to do with them outside of punching your opponents in the face. So I had to find a different outlet for it, and it just so happens to be that there's a 2-card combo with Ominous Seas and Greater Good, because every time you create an 8/8 Kraken, you can sacrifice it to Greater Good and draw 8 cards. Ominous Seas is going to see that you drew 8 cards, put 8 more counters there, you discard the 3, and then go ahead and draw, sacrifice the next Kraken, draw 8, and you can rifle through your entire library and then play the Thassa's Oracle and win on the spot. The benefits to running Song of Creation are so much greater than the last line of text where it says discard your hand at the end step, because you get access to a lot of free spells in these colors. Like in blue, all of your protection is mostly going to be free. Force of Will, Force of Negation, Pact of Negation, or have an incredibly low cost. An Offer You Can't Refuse, Swan Song. The list goes on. You have Fierce Guardianship, Deflecting Swat, Veil of Summer, let's go. If you haven't watched my top 5 cards from New Capenna, I explained why an Offer You Can't Refuse is great, because if you've picked up a ton of cards and you decide to play a Soul Ring, cast your own Mental Misstep on it, Offer You Can't Refuse your own Mental Misstep, you get a ritual essentially by creating 2 treasures and giving yourself mana flexibility. You also have access to the 4 1 mana value Phyrexian uncommons. You have Noxious Survival, Gut Shot, Gataxian Probe, and Mental Misstep. Growth Spiral and Crop Rotation are also wonderful here. Going with a Crop Rotation, sacrificing a basic land or something unimportant, and grabbing a Gaia's Cradle when you have so many snakes is just disgusting. The fact that it comes in untapped as well is really just like the icing on top, the cherry on, the cherry on the sundae, is that what they say? Is that what them kids are saying these days? The Court of Calling is unbelievable here, because once you hit with Xyris and you create the 3 snakes, those snakes are green and tap for the 3 color that are required for Court of Calling. So once you swing with Xyris, create those 3 snakes, Court of Calling is live, tap those 3 snakes, then all you have to do is pay the mana cost of whatever creature you want out of the library. And so if you're in the middle of combat, you can go into your main phase 2 with a dockside that just hit the board and a ton of mana to set yourself up for future turns. Moving on to the final bit, let's talk about the mana base, because you need flexible colors, you need flexible mana in order to assemble a well-tuned deck. And with this one, since we don't really want to run into too many lands, I'm playing about 32, give or take, that'll be up to you. When you start reaching into higher power levels, you'll realize that there aren't as many slots available for basic lands, and so your deck is more susceptible to like Blood Moon effects, but you get greater utility access. So using fetch lands to filter the deck so that you get the lands you need, the colors you need, and then later on in the game when you got Song of Creation, you're not drawing into tons of lands, you've filtered them out already. Greater utility pieces in this deck, I'm playing Cephalid Coliseum and Gaia Reach Sanitarium, and I like both of those for their symmetrical card draw. Gaia Reach Sanitarium essentially creates 3 snakes for you by paying 2 mana. Seems good. With Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, we received 3 new great lands for this. Otawara, which is just unbelievable, uncounterable removal. We have Boseiju, again, same deal. And then we have Sokenzan. And since you're already taking advantage of all these tokens you have, why not create more tokens and then also have no downside to playing it as a land? So to recap this whole deck list idea, the win conditions are to play Thassa's Oracle through Underworld Breach Lines and Brain Freeze, to manually draw your entire deck out with either Song of Creation or an Ominous Seas Greater Good combo, or you can also use a Goblin Bombardment or Impact Tremors to create a ton of snakes, giving your opponents tons of cards and killing them that way. Or you can do it my favorite way, using Psychic Corrosion and Altar of the Brood to mill your opponents out and win that way. The old Goku Yakon scenario. If you want to build this deck and not have it be like crazy high-powered Thassa's Oracle focused type thing, you can always pull out some of those pieces like Underworld Breach and Lion's Eye Diamond and some of the fast mana, and you can play like the Cultivates and Kodama's Reach and play the Howling Mine and whatnot. I love plugging a Wandering Archaic into this deck because I think it warps the game around it and just makes Xyris that much more of a threat. I love playing Consecrated Sphinx at mid power with this deck, just because every time you hit, your opponent's going to draw 3 and you're going to draw 3 and then you're going to draw 6 more cards. So it's essentially a draw 9 every single time you pop somebody. Xyris the Writhing Storm is one of the most fun commanders that I've had the pleasure of building and playing. If you guys want to check out the list, I'll put it below in the description. And if you want to support the channel, be sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. And that's about it, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for more Call Me Commander as we get the ball rolling. Let's go!